Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Red and Ed Show, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. My name is Jay Edgar, and I am joined once again to my right and to your left by the wonderful Elaine. Welcome back to the show. I don't know why I keep welcoming you here. I mean, this is half yours, so I mean, you kind of have some ownership of it, but I need to turn your
I
mic
know,
on too.
right? Get it together. We're both behind the eight ball today. That's okay.
Well, we do have plenty to talk about. How was your week going out on the campaign trail?
It's very busy. And we just scheduled a whole 2.5 week tour for Jo Jorgensen. She's going to be all over the United States the first 2.5 weeks of April. See? August. August. So things are rolling and it's going very fast. So yeah, it's good. How was
Yeah,
your week?
it was pretty good. I didn't get near enough of the audio platform catch up that I had hoped to do. As I keep promising every week, I'm going to get caught back up on the audio platform. I didn't get anywhere close to any of that, but I got to spend some time up in Buffalo County, in God's country, up in west central Wisconsin in the Bluffs. I'll send some pictures over to you of that after the show here, because there's a great view up, excuse me, up at my parents' house, and you got to see it. Got a lot of work done. I got a lot of oil. I forgot how nice it is to go work on stuff, work with your hands. So I felt great about that.
Cool. Awesome. That's great. Do
And
you have any other news to share?
I went. I did have a meeting today as well, so I think I might be changing some career paths so I can take some more time and help out with the website a little bit more. I am going to be going to taking my real estate license exam so I can go sell houses. I think that's what you
Very
were getting at
cool.
there.
Yeah, I was. I knew, but they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like I could still make the truck payment and keep the roof over my head by doing that. So it's lucrative enough to me. It'll free up some time that I can put some more time into this show and all the other shows that we manage as well. So it's going to be a good time, I think. And I know how to sell stuff. So,
Well, that's good. It's a
but
very handy skill to have.
you know what else happened this week? And speaking of Freedom Scoop news, and we will talk a bit about what's going on in Freedom Scoop over there. I don't know if you caught this or not because I don't know what you do after the show's there. But on Monday after our show, I tuned over to watch the Generational Gap, and they got shut down.
Permanently?
No, just for the episode. They were Robert was mid sentence talking something, and it just boom right on to the next video.
Dare I ask what they were talking about?
They were talking about, I'm not going to say the word out there that they were talking about. They were talking about a certain incident that happened in 2015 that involved a cheese typed pie and the door in a fence. If anybody else can get that reference out of a pizza parlor down in DC area. They were talking about that and comparing it to the Wayfair story. I don't know if I've found a sufficient a way enough around that so they don't shut this show down.
It'll be a short night.
Well, we'll be on all
We
the
can
other
just
platforms.
restart. It'll be fine.
But yeah, mid sentence they just shut that down, and instantly they got one more viewer. So I'm guessing that Susan Wojcicki put a babysitter on their channel, but they also hit their 200 subscriber because of that.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that was our Freedom Scoop news this week. So and make sure you go over and check out the Freedom Scoop Media Group because we've got our show in the Generational Gap, of course, but we've also got Stephen Ignoramus, who is back to the Daily Ignoramus this week. We've got the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the Freckles and Brit Show, and the R-Rated Conservative. So come and check us out and check out the swag that we have over there to try and help and support great creators like us, the Generational Gap, and many more. Well, we've got a lot to get to here today. We've got this Portland story here, which I've already had to issue a retraction to because I thought this was all hoaxed. And now that I've read a little bit more into it, I actually believe a bit what's going on here. There were two officers that were killed in Texas right away as soon as everything started going down here. AOC has decided to comment and talk about how crime surge is just people trying to get some bread. In other news here, Ruth Bader Ginsburg hangs on to life, and John Lewis has passed away, so we'll talk just a bit about what's going on here. Hillary went on The Daily Show, and I got actually some video of that. I edited it down and ready to go for that. And Angela Davis also weighed in, and I took that video as well, so we'll watch a little bit about that. The Trump administration has walked back on this deportation order. We'll see what's happening there. And Mary Trump decided that she needed to weigh in on everything else. To round this all out, we'll talk a little bit about COVID and the first federal election in years. And we've got the infamous Burger King commercial, which we'll sit back and watch and talk about what was going on over there. It is going to be all of that and more as we stream live to YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, and Facebook. And if you can't catch us live, or you just want to go ahead and check in with us to start with and go on with your day, you can also catch us back on demand over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com, or you can catch up with us, if I ever catch up with it, and that's going to be my goal for the week, on the audio platforms over on Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. And remember, if you're over on iTunes and you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. No less than 5 stars. If you do have a comment or something that's you think the show is less than 5 stars, send me an email, edsblogtwitter@gmail.com, and then I will work to correct that so we can get that 5-star rating and move up the charts. You want to catch us up on a little bit of chat here before we get started and everything?
Sure. Ron's here, and the Chill Anarchist is here. He asked, how did Ed get a hottie to co-host with him? And I told him that you asked me nicely, because that's exactly what you did. And he also wants to know, Wiggy Malone's here, and he wants to know if you would sell that Boston Red Sox flag.
Probably not, because A, baseball is the only sport I can stand right now, and B, it's so hard to find a replacement for it here in the middle of the country. Now, if I was still living in Boston, I'd be tripping over the things, but over here in Wisconsin, they're a little bit harder to come by, unfortunately.
What's the most popular team that you see in Wisconsin?
Oh,
because they don't have their own team. Oh, okay.
We do have our own team. It's just National League, not American League.
Gotcha.
Otherwise,
speaking of that, Canada said no to MLB baseball.
Oh, jeez. I did see something about that, and I didn't throw it up there. But yeah,
it's probably a topic for next week. We'll get to it.
Yeah, the Blue Jays suck anyway, so.
Who needs them?
And that does come from a very, very Red Sox state of mind as well. I do have to say that. So, with all of that there, you want to get into topics here?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'm going to start out reading from Newsweek here, which I can't believe. They keep telling me I have 4 free articles remaining every month, and it's the same thing every day, so they never count me back down, but I will take that because they shut me off of IBD this morning. But coming from Newsweek, Trump accused of deploying secret police in Portland as a political stunt. Political leaders in Oregon have accused President Trump of interfering in Portland's handling of widespread protests and riots in the wake of George Floyd's death as a political stunt to rally his base ahead of the November election. Despite repeated calls from Oregon Governor Kate Brown and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler for federal authorities to remove their officers from city streets, the Trump administration has remained adamant on maintaining a law enforcement presence in Portland. So we saw a lot of talk about this over the weekend. A lot of what we saw of this were people that were coming out directly and saying that this was just people, unmarked police, no markings, no identifiers or anything, coming up and just scooping people up off the streets and violating their constitutional rights and questioning them and this and that and the next thing. And you know, I was against this at first, and I thought it was a big hoax just based on the Chaz, because of course we saw all the way on social media that this is Trump finally being the dictator that we thought he was going to be. And then I read a little bit more into this, and I had to issue a retraction this morning. But what have you seen on this so far?
So I think it's funny that people are upset with Trump for doing this, because Obama's the one who signed this. He signed the NDAA that makes this possible. So I think the wrong dictator just got the job. I think they were really hoping that it would be Hillary doing this, but it's not. And so they have a problem with it. But their great and wonderful President Obama is the one who made this possible. So there are a lot of people screaming online about this. And I think it's even funnier that there are libertarians asking, so the Libertarian Party tweeted today about it and said that, you know, it was unconstitutional and that we basically want to abolish the Department of Homeland Security. I don't know why that was a surprise to anyone, because I don't know if you've ever been in a room of libertarians when we discuss the Patriot Act and the Department of Homeland Security. There's a lot of screeching. We
Oh,
don't like it. We've never liked it. We've opposed it since its inception. So for some reason, there are people that are shocked that think that the Libertarian Party has been taken over by leftists now because we opposed the Department of Homeland Security, and that is just mind blowing to me.
well, that's one thing too that I've noticed right off from the beginning of this is that's the first thing people were saying all day was, well, where are the libertarians on this? The libertarians are awfully silent about this, and I'm like,
Yeah, we're sitting back and letting you reap what you've sown. That's what we're doing.
well, that is.
This has been a long time coming.
And it absolutely has here. But I look at this and I'm actually kind of in support of what they were doing because now I've actually looked and seen a little bit more of what was going on with this. The mainstream news when this was first happening were very, very scant to tell you, like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs down in the article that this wasn't the CBP coming in, Customs and Border Patrol special agents coming in to police everything that was going on in Portland. They were literally just going and protecting the federal property that they were centered out of and leaving everybody else to reap what they've sown on of all of this. So it was the federal government protecting a federal building, not necessarily taking over the police, even though they probably fucking should at this point because the Oregon state government or the city government especially, have not done anything to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of property of the people that live in that city right now, but that's between them and their government.
They have already sued the government, the federal government, for sending in the DHS police. So it'll be very interesting to see how that goes because I'm interested to see if the courts side with states' rights or not. If they can say that the federal government can deploy whatever they want, federal law enforcement into your state without your permission or knowledge. I don't think they even had knowledge of it.
Well, they also barely had time to notice the fact that, yes, they were deploying because, I mean, the people out there were barricading the doors and with people inside, not necessarily barricading it so they could go occupy, but barricading it with people inside. And what happens after you barricade people inside at that point? That building is going to go up.
That scene from The Patriot.
Yeah.
All over again.
Yeah.
It's not good.
And there was another tinfoily theory that I heard about this over the weekend and a little bit into today as well. That is it possible that the people that they scooped up in the video just kind of scooped up because he was really calm. The guy that we all saw in the video, he was real calm about this. I started hearing some chatter about whether or not this was a guy that was an informant on Antifa and they were going in and doing an extraction for him. Do you think there's any validity to that at all?
Maybe. I don't know.
It seems like a stretch to
I don't
me.
get down with the tinfoil hat crowd. Not usually, at least. Sometimes, but not very often.
No, we don't take call-ins on this show, by the way. That's something that we possibly could do on another show. We've actually talked about that off mic, about doing that as we grew the channel, but I don't think we're at that point just yet. I thought about doing that on Ed Talk a little bit, but I haven't figured out the technology for that.
So the answer is maybe, but not today.
Yeah, maybe down the road. So one of the I listen to Sticks as I always, often talk about early in the morning. One of the things that he brought up on this whole situation in Portland was the fact that this is on federal property. Now, if you wanted to keep the federal government from coming in and defending their own property, you could put an amendment through the Constitution that would actually probably get a little bit of traction out of there that would make it illegal for the federal government to own property in places other than the District of Columbia. Do you think that would be a possible solution down the road for something like this?
I hope not.
No?
No. They don't need to own any more property.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Make it illegal for them to own property.
Then yes. But I don't think that the courts will side with that. I think they'll give them what they want.
Even if it's an amendment? I mean, yeah, I could see them striking down an actual law that came out of Congress, but...
It depends on how it's worded.
What is the official libertarian stance on the federal government owning property? I know the Constitution says that D.C. is set aside to be federal property and we should cede all the residential area back to Maryland and Virginia respectively, but Like, other than outside of the District of Columbia, I would think that would actually be a conflict of interest, wouldn't you?
We're getting into like the public lands argument and the Department of the Interior and all that fun stuff, and that's the whole can of worms that we do not have time to talk about.
Duly noted.
There's no easy answer. I'll just put it that way. There's no easy answer. I'll just piss off some libertarians or another group of libertarians.
Well, in addition to this story here, we actually had a little bit more violence as well coming off this, and this was, from what I understand, happening probably as we were turning the camera off last week. So, out of ABC News, two police officers shot and killed in McAllen, Texas. Two police officers were shot and killed in Texas on Saturday night, according to officials. The shooting took place as the officers were responding to a call at a home and came under fire. What I'm trying to tell you is the officers never had a chance to suspect a deadly assault on them, McAllen, Police Chief Victor Rodriguez said in a press statement. The suspect shot himself and died as other officers arrived on the scene, Rodriguez said. He was told to drop the gun, but instead shot himself. So it looks like these two police officers were coming in and responding to a house call, and we don't really know what was going on with this. It looks like there may have been a marijuana possession, which is a completely different conversation in and of itself. But they essentially just showed up at the house, got shot, and then the guy went out and shot himself before he could get caught. So we'll never be able to ask him what his motive was, if it was a fake call or anything else out of this. But what have you seen on this?
I haven't seen much on it, probably because it happened kind of late last week, and we missed it on the news last Monday. But I mean, we've seen things similar to that happen before, where cops have been called to residences and then it's an ambush. I think that indicates that someone is struggling with their mental health in a very serious way, because that is not anywhere close to normal behavior. I feel like even if you're someone who doesn't like law enforcement, that's still a stretch.
Well, that was what I was going to ask, if you think that this has anything to do at all with what we've been seeing since the George Floyd kneeling on the neck incident.
Probably. But like you said, he's dead, so we can't ask him. So unless they find some kind of manifesto on his computer or a note or something, we're not going to know. I mean, people are going to twist it to be whatever kind of agenda they need it to be to fit their narrative.
And that is the worst part of all of this here, is without being able to ask the guy, that does give people free reign to come out and twist this to whatever conspiracy network what they want it to be. I really wish we could take some time and try some of these people for some of the things that they've done, because some of it is just extremism and some of it's just a guy who either took a bunch of drugs or a bunch of pills and decided to do something stupid, or just was unbalanced in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the solution to this, and I know that we're going to be talking a little bit more about federal law enforcement and alleged hitmen. We'll be talking a bit more about that next week, because that was breaking this morning as well. So We'll talk some more about that. But we do have to keep going along on this one. We're moving along on this week today. But tell me a bit about AOC this week, because it seems that she has decided she knows what the crime surge has been over the past few months.
Yeah, so her quote from the Daily Wire article said, "Why is this uptick in crime happening? Let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact there's record unemployment in the United States right now? The fact that there are people at a level of economic desperation that we've not seen since the Great Recession. Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their children and they don't have money. So maybe you have to. They're put into a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night." Como said in response, I don't know what she said, so I have no comment on what she said, but people have theories. An incorrect theory doesn't wind up being correct because there's a void. So he's basically saying correlation doesn't equal causation. She is blaming New York, the rising tide of violence in New York City, on people not being able to pay their rent. And Cuomo also later said, "You can't be evicted right now." So I think they've paused all evictions in New York City, it sounds like. So you can't be evicted in New York at all right now. how that plays out on the back end, whether you're still going to, I mean, I would assume someone is still going to owe that rent at some point. Like someone has to pay it.
Yeah,
Nobody's just going to forgive 3 or 4 months of rent.
yeah,
They
we are going
just
to be
can't
in a
afford
real
to.
mess in a couple weeks, or in a few months, I should say. And
It's
we're,
already started.
yeah,
It's already started. There's like 32% or 32 million Americans didn't pay their rent or their mortgage in July. And that's because they're all out of their savings. They managed to make their savings and their unemployment last until now, and now they have nothing. So it's going to get scary in the next 2 or 3 months. It's going to be really scary. But anyways, so back to this story. So last week there was a story that was sort of similar to this, but she hadn't come out and talked about it in this way. She's ignoring the fact that there's a lot of other things going on here in New York right now. So they've disbanded their anti-crime unit.
hmm
Logic would tell you that all police units are anti-crime units, but whatever. So this specific anti-crime unit was a plainclothes police unit that was all plainclothes, and they were dispatched to some more sticky situations. And so as a result, they had a higher percentage of officer involved shootings in their unit. They've been disbanded. And now the rest of the police department is looking at these rising crime rates, and they're saying, oh, see what happens when you don't just let us have whatever power we want to do whatever we want, like crime goes up. But they ignore the fact, and she does this as well because it doesn't fit her narrative. They ignore the fact that in New York is one of the most difficult states to own a gun. So there would probably be less crime if more people were armed, because more criminals would think twice about breaking into apartments and buildings or stores or tobacco shops or whatever, what have you. Whether it's for bread or money or drugs or whatever it might be. If they know that there's like more likely than not of a chance that you're armed, they're a lot less likely to do it. And so the crime rate right now is there are innocent people being killed, and that's terrible. If what I'm saying were true, if more people own firearms, you would see more suspects dying rather than innocent people who were being aggressed upon dying. And that's a completely different issue. So I think it's it's dumb for her to say that. Well, people are afraid to pay their rent, and that's why things are violent. I think what she's driving at is that the more people get desperate, the further they're willing to go to provide for their family. But I'm not convinced that the majority of this is people trying to provide for their families. I think it's people taking advantage of the situation.
Oh yes, and don't you usually go out and get a loaf of bread in a box that's 70 inches by 36 inches by 2 inches?
No,
You don't usually get your bread that way?
no, I don't.
So, and I did see some merit to this. Some merit to what they were saying. I mean, if you're going out and looting a store, you're not always going to go out and get food, especially. I mean, you see other robbery too. People don't a lot of times, or I don't know what the statistic is behind that, but a lot of times people don't necessarily go out and make a robbery to keep the stuff. Usually they'll sell it for drugs.
Hmm.
So I could
Yeah.
see where her little sycophant followers will come up and say, "Oh well, yeah, that's what they're doing. They're just stealing it so they can sell it for money." But they're not.
Right.
Well, it
Sorry, I'm
sounds
gonna
like
have
you
to
have
mute
a friend.
myself. I have a friend and he's upset about something outside.
I know we were talking a bit about that off mic too, and you were having a little bit of fun with him today as well.
Yeah, he's a funny. Yeah, so I'm dog sitting for everyone that's wondering what's going on. I'm dog sitting my friend's two dogs, and her dog Kevin Bacon is a chow mix, and Ed has seen him.
hmm
He's very cute. He looks like a little bear, but he hates other dogs. So we have a big patio door right over here, and whenever he sees someone else walking their dog, it's a big deal. So I think he thought he saw something, but he's good now.
Well, I actually think what you were saying towards the end of that topic is a really, really good way to segue into the next story that we have up here. And this is something else I want to see if you want to lead on this, especially with your libertarian leading. That is that gun sales have increased in massive, massive numbers. I don't know if you've ever watched Matt Christensen on YouTube, but he did a solo video on this that was actually really, really good on the statistics. But you want to lead us through what we're seeing out of this?
Yeah, so this report from the Daily Wire is summarizing the number of FBI background checks conducted last month for people attempting to purchase firearms. They have completely and utterly shattered all previous all-time records. And of course, people are attributing this to the pandemic, civil unrest, defund police movements, people that are worried for their own personal safety. And these statistics were put together, the reasoning behind it was put together from interviewing buyers, store owners, and gun experts. And that was reported in the Wall Street Journal. So background checks in June were up 136% compared to last year.
Mm-hmm.
And background checks in June for civilians seeking a license to carry were the highest since the FBI began conducting these checks 20 years ago. So even more people are owning firearms. What I would be interested to see is if this is, I guess it would be new gun owners.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, it does say that the reports are that dealers estimate 40% of the sales have been going to first-time buyers.
Right.
An increase over the normal average of about a quarter. They're claiming many of the new buyers are people who say they never thought they would own a firearm and were previously critical of those who did. That, to me, is very interesting.
Well, we're getting to that point as well. I mean, even you're calling the police right now, and you're getting the 911. Well, you're not getting the 911 message, but some people are getting the 911 message of. I mean, we can't dispatch somebody right now because we're stretched too thin. That's part of the reason that we saw the Ken and Karen story, is because they called, they got that message and said we are stretched too thin. Now, and I've actually taken some questions as, okay, how do I buy a firearm? How do I get into this? Can you walk me through what's a good gun? I get a lot of questions like that personally.
I do too.
From a lot of first-time buyers. I'm like, well, here's who you can talk to. What's been nice about me is that my sister's boyfriend actually owns a gun store, so a lot of times I can go off and, get them in touch with him and see if he can do something about it.
Yeah, my advice is always, I tend to have a lot of women that come to me and ask, and that's totally understandable because I think women, some women at least, might feel like judged a little bit if they were to ask a man. So they feel more comfortable asking another woman, like, well, what do you like? I always tell people the same thing, whatever you're comfortable with. So go to the gun range, plan on going 5 times and try out 2 or 3 different guns every time you go. And if there's one that you keep coming back to that you just are comfortable with and you grow to like it, that's probably the one that you should get. And it doesn't matter if it's a Glock or a SIG or an HK or whatever it might be. Any of those are fine, as long as you are comfortable using it, training with it, and you're accurate with it, so that if you do need to defend yourself, you can do so effectively. And ultimately at that point, it doesn't matter what brand of gun the bullet comes out of. If it stops the threat, you're doing good. That's what you need.
Hey, did you see the Washington Post article on this earlier this week? I know that was one of the big bases for Matt Christensen's video. That's why I brought it up off of that. I didn't see it until I heard him talking about it. So
I didn't see that one.
WAPO, in their infinite wisdom, decided that they needed to do a study which had no correlation behind it whatsoever
Of course not.
how much gun crime has been going up in the wake of people buying so many more guns without doing anything to try and show whether or not the firearms used were the new firearms that were purchased for new buyers. There's no statistics to go along with it, just two correlations going along with themselves, and like you had said earlier with the OC comment, correlation hopefully equaling causation in some of this.
Hmm. Yeah, I think they're going to see a lot more illegal firearm purchases over state lines in New York.
Well, one of the things that really made things interesting for me when I was listening to this video and then going back and reading the article afterwards was the fact that the Washington Post made a correlation as to how many guns or new gun purchases were done in a state versus how many times somebody went onto Google and looked up the N word.
What?
Yes.
Why would you need to look that up?
Well, just various posts of things having to do with the N word or racism in general.
Lord, people are nuts.
So yes, the Washington Post is trying to attribute the surge in gun sales into racism.
Because it sells.
So I don't know if you saw that or not, but that cracked me up too because Christensen actually went on the video and he did Google searches for best gun to do racist things for being racist.
Oh my God. Hopefully we don't get pulled off of YouTube for that. Racists doing racist things racistly.
With guns.
With guns. Very gunly.
He did another Google search on the video of what gun goes best with a white hood.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, he was trolling the hell out of the Google people, the Waffle people on that one. It was hilarious. One of the things that was also brought up in that video that I think is important to note here is you were talking about 40% for first-time gun buyers and the number of background checks that went up. None of that attributes for in states that allow to do this. I know my state does. When you go to a family member and get a new firearm that you don't have to get background checked, or in my state where you can go buy it from the guy down the street without having a background check. I mean, we have universal sales, so none of that was accounted for. So this number is possibly insanely higher than what we're already seeing. New ownership of firearms is probably insanely higher than even what these statistics are telling you.
Yeah, I have a friend who lives out of state, and he lives in, I think, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And he had made a few posts during the pandemic where he had said, yeah, a friend of mine asked me if he could borrow a firearm for, pandemic purposes, and I told him it was okay. So I think he did that with 3 or 4 people. So I'm sure that he was not the only one that was doing that. And I can't blame people, for doing that. Especially since then we saw a bunch of civil unrest kind of right on the tail end of that. And now we're going into fall, it's not that far away.
Mm-hmm.
And we're probably going to be looking at another resurgence of COVID and potentially more shutdowns. And this is going to continue, and it's not going to get better anytime soon, I don't think.
Plus hunting season.
And hunting season, yeah.
That's going to drive those numbers up too.
Ron Helton says, are we sure the new buyers are buying for protection and not for use in robbing others? I mean, I would hope not.
I don't think they usually buy those legally when they do that.
Yeah, I kind of think that they do the file off of the serial number and all that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I'm going to move off of this unless you have something else to say. But I want to talk about this wacky thing that came from the Smithsonian this week. Because this Richard Spencer.
Please share. We've not seen this.
Everyone who's been on Contemporary has seen this already, but Richard Spencer could not have written this any better. So the National Museum of African American History and Culture put out an article this week talking about race and what it means to be African American and what it means to be white. It looks like they took the pictures down, which is absolutely ridiculous. But to look back onto all of this, yeah, they took all of this down off of this. I knew that it was going to happen. This has all been completely edited. I didn't think to archive this because I thought that they were going to stand on this. So that is my bad on that for not archiving this. But in this article that we had from the Smithsonian this week, there was a chart initially that showed what whiteness was and why people of color are to be expected to go along with this. And what came out of it were various values like the nuclear family, like working hard, like mathematics and keeping time.
What?
It was
That
insane.
sounds like some eugenics type crap.
Hmm. Yeah,
That sounds like Che Guevara, is what it sounds like.
yeah, it did. I couldn't believe it. I read it in the morning. Like, I read halfway down this, and I left the article in the Discord. And yeah, pretty much as soon as they started getting pushback from this, they started pulling it back down. Looking at the new page that they have here, the new one that they have up, at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, we believe that any productive conversation on race must start with honesty, respect for others, and an openness to ideas and information that provide new perspectives. In that context, we recently unveiled the Talking About Race, an online portal providing research studies and other academic materials from the fields of history, education, psychology, and human development. Our goal in doing so is to contribute to a discussion on this vitally important subject. And yeah, all the rest of the people in the live chat can attest to just how Spencer-ish this stuff was, how David Duke this stuff was, what was on this. And now it's all completely whitewashed and cleaned and squeaky clean. So it doesn't look like they were giving the bigotry of low expectations. Did you see anything on the original on this at all throughout social media or anything?
No, I'm just now looking at it.
Yeah, you missed a lot of good. Look at if you have the Discord open. Look in the Midget B and S8 section if you dare, because it's a little bit scary in there. They are competing as to who gets spicier, but I know Midget B threw a couple of them up there that were making fun of it. But just to see this, yeah, mathematics, working hard, and the nuclear family are all virtues of whiteness that need to be torn down in order to make an equal society.
What?
I will, as soon as we're off mic, I will find an archived version of this webpage. I know there's going to be one
WTAF.
out. What's the A?
Actual.
Oh, wait a second.
Wow. I didn't see this. I'm kind of glad I didn't see it because it would have probably been enraging.
Yeah. I'll know what I could do is actually I can get you the contemporary video from that because I actually scrolled down and looked at because I always have the news stories in the background when I read them, so you can actually scroll through and see what I was seeing when that happened. But yeah, it was insane. What the hell day was that? Tuesday, I think it was. So yes, now it's all squeaky clean, and they had to go and correct themselves just so they didn't get anything crazy about this. I'm going to leave that up on the page so I remember to go and find the archive version of this. And now for the stupidest thing that I've heard come out of news today.
Today?
Well, this happened on Friday when I found out
Only
about this.
today?
Yeah. This happened on Friday. Thursday night they came out with this. Berkeley Council announces that unarmed civilian city workers will perform traffic stops, not police. The City Council in Berkeley, California approved a measure Wednesday to eliminate police from conducting traffic stops and instead send an unarmed civilian city worker in their place. Though several municipalities across the country have proposed and enacted measures to redirect police department funding, the traffic stop measure moving forward in Berkeley is believed to be the first of its kind in the nation. And I have a lot of questions about this, but I'm going to let you ask some questions first.
I have all of the questions.
Ask away.
First of all, how much does this cost? What is the cost benefit analysis on this? Because it seems very reactive.
Well, I mean, the cost benefit analysis of this is people aren't going to be scared to stop because the scary man with the police gun isn't going to come up to their window. I have actually been stopped when I lived in Massachusetts, and my ex-girlfriend at the time told me it was because I was driving an old truck and I was headed north towards Canada because I had a 94 Chevy half-ton at the time. And I was heading up there, and like the police officer stopped me, yelled at the bullhorn at me to get over onto an off-ramp, and then when he came up to the window, I mean, he was back to the truck with his hand on his holster the whole time. I'm just sitting there like, okay. Like sneaking up to the side of the truck, so, you know, trying to make himself all intimidating and everything off of that. So I could understand in the California mindset why people would do this, but if there is no risk to injury, why do you stop?
I don't know. I saw a news story about a police department that had purchased all of the commercial data available about license plates. So they didn't even need to pull people anymore to give them tickets. They could just run the license plate, save it for later, and then mail the person a ticket. They didn't actually have to like pull them over on the road for a broken tail light or an expired registration or like anything like that. So it's like, why can't, I mean, I don't think that's constitutional either, but why can't they just do that? I guess. I don't know. It's like you have no expectation of not being recorded
Mm-hmm.
or tracked, basically. Because if they can't do it, they know that commercially, other people are allowed to do it. So they'll just buy their information.
Right. And the Traffic Act, especially, this just blows my mind because, I mean, you've got to be a pretty good driver to engage in a police chase. Plus, they'll use their firearms. You know, what happens when some tweaked out tweaker that's up on heroin and meth and all kinds of other things, he gets stopped for a broken taillight? Nothing else other than a broken taillight. And he just starts punching or shooting or something else like that because he sees the city civilian worker coming up to give him that great big ticket.
Right. I don't know. I guess we'll see how it goes. This will be a fun experiment. Maybe
Or,
people won't stop anymore. What if that starts happening? Then they'll just put the police force back on it. Because they're not going to give up that revenue.
no, that they are not. Well, it's the other side of it too. I mean, if they do wind up in a chase, like say somebody is in an older Pontiac Firebird and has a trunk full of, let's say, mason jars full of a clear substance, and this city civilian worker decides he wants to stop him to have a look, and this person decides that he doesn't want to stop because he's in the middle of making deliveries, or he doesn't want to be caught with said substance in his trunk. I mean, does the city civilian worker make the chase at that point, or does he call the police at that point? There's so much going on with this. I have so many questions about this.
Well, I'm in wait and see mode.
Yeah, I don't know
Will
where to go
people
with this.
cooperate
Yeah.
or will they not? Will this be the same thing as those traffic cams that now are more and more often being found unconstitutional when they're challenged in court?
Well, yeah, that's unlawful search and seizure right there.
Yeah, if these are not police officers, then I'm trying to think of what kind of argument you could make. I guess if it's not an officer of the law, then are you under an obligation to stop? Are you under an obligation to do what they say?
I
I
know
don't know.
some people make the argument, well, the officers in Canada aren't armed. Eh?
Neither is anyone else in Canada.
Fair point. So that's what I have on this, and I want to hit one more here before we hit the chat break, and that is the fact that the Washington Redskins have knelt to the pressure at this point. According to ESPN.com, if it'll load back up for me because it unloaded for whatever reason, and now it won't load. Good job on this. But I also know what happened because bowing to pressure at this point, FedEx, PepsiCo, Nike, and several other companies that were supplying for the Washington Redskins have decided that they've had enough, and the Washington Redskins decided they had enough, and they pulled their name and their logo. So it is no longer going to be the Washington Redskins.
Okay. They should be called the Washington Tyrants.
That was a good one. I was going to ask you about. Oh, it finally loaded up here.
Or the Washington Warmongers. I like that one too. I like alliteration.
The Washington Redskins announced Monday they'll be retiring their nickname and logo after completing a thorough review that began on July 3rd. Today we are announcing that we will be retiring the Redskins name and logo upon completion of this review, the team said in a statement. Dan Snyder and Coach Ron Rivera are working closely to develop a new name and design approach that will enhance the standing of our proud tradition-rich franchise and inspire our sponsors, fans, and communities for the next 100 years. Now, note that date, July 3rd, because that was back when we were talking about what was going to happen at Mount Rushmore. And the sacred Indian land. No, the sacred Indian land over there. But yes, the sandblasting as well. So this was all, I think, a little bit engineered, and this, of course, happened right before the Supreme Court gave away half of a state. So now we're sitting up this, and you've already come up with some names for this. Let's see, live chat, do you have any other names that the Washington Redskins could be at this point coming forward? I know we got the Tyrants and the Warmongers. I said it should be the Washington Orangemen. Or Orangeskins, or just something to troll the hell.
I think they're on a different topic right now. You want to do a check-in? You know what's going on?
Yeah, let's do a quick live chat break here. I want to set up a couple articles for the upcoming here.
Voight is upset with you because he cannot post links.
Well, then he can go find a different channel to sit in.
That's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's, this is, and I said this on the video on live chat courtesy here. You're in my house. You're in my channel right now. So you play by the rules, or you go play somewhere else.
Yes.
And you and I can actually see the link still because of the chat bot that's in there.
Yeah, I did click on it, and I was like, oh, it's ADL. Never mind. No, we don't need to read that. It's trash.
Yeah, the ADL is kind of trash out there. We have anything else good going on here?
Let's blow up Mount Rushmore. No heroes on that mountain. Replace them with Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, and me from the Chill Anarchists. I mean, I don't know how you compare to Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone, but those are some big ass boots to fill. So I'm all down with Davy Crockett, though. Put him on a mountain. Maybe not sacred Indian burial land or anything like that, but he was cool. He killed a bear with his bare hands or something like that.
Yeah, that he did. I mean, he was a real man's man, and that was a lot of real libertarian ideas. If you want to see what your rights are, go out into the woods where there's no society, and what you still have over are your rights.
Yep.
Well, that was quite the man's man right there. What else do we have?
That's pretty much it.
All right. Well, let's move along then here and talk about the bad news and then the good news. So I know I have it reversed in the notes here, but let's start by talking about John Lewis. So, civil rights legend John Lewis dead at 80. John Roberts Lewis, son of sharecroppers who survived a brutal beating by police during a landmark 1965 march in Selma, Alabama, to become a towering figure of the civil rights movement and a longtime U.S. congressman, has died after a 6-month battle with cancer. He was 80. It is with inconsolable grief and enduring sadness we announce the passing of U.S. Rep. John Lewis. His family said in a statement, "He was honored and respected as the conscience of the U.S. Congress and an icon of American history, but we knew him as a loving father and a brother." And good on John Lewis for standing up for the civil rights. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, that was a worthy cause, and it needed to be done far sooner than it was done. It did perpetuate later on some other programs that I think disadvantaged minorities more than they helped them. But overall, the general spirit of it was pure, and I can appreciate that.
For the most part, I can appreciate everything that went on with Mary. I'm sorry, I'm looking at a completely different story right now with John Lewis as well. But unfortunately for Lewis, he did drink the Potomac water.
Yeah,
very,
he
very
definitely
much
became
so.
He definitely became a swamp creature later in life.
And it's unfortunate to see, too, because, I mean, yes, he did great things. He made great strides for freedom. And, I mean, freedom is a big thing around us, especially between you and I. We both look at the liberty movement as something that's carried us up into this moment. But it stopped being about freedom and started being back about control again as he got later in life. And I don't wish any ill onto the guy. I'm glad he was able to pass along smoothly and, for the most part, from what I understand, fairly peacefully.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can really hope for.
I do wish he hadn't spent 30 years in Congress, but that gives to my state of the people going in there for a career versus the people that are actually going in there to do something. I don't know
There
what
is
your
that.
stance is on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely for term limits for sure.
What is your stance on John Lewis?
Um, I think he was a big government monster, honestly. I mean, most of them are, but I do think early in his career he had good intentions, and that's what I appreciate. And someone who stands up for minority rights and things like that, those are noble things. Often the conclusions of that are not always noble as one would think that they should be, and that's kind of where I'm at. I don't agree with him ideologically on everything, but
Yeah, he was
I
kind of a
appreciate
Marxist
it.
towards the end, I thought.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think all Democrats are getting pulled that way, so that's not really that surprising.
Did you see the other big news that came out of the Lewis story? Well, first off, they tried to renew the Voting Rights Act. That I read that one this morning, which was, yeah, let's go dance on somebody's grave before his body is cold.
Yikes.
But Marco Rubio and another Alaska representative whose name escapes me right now decided to make one of the biggest faux pas out there. Now, it wasn't the first time it happened, but when Marco Rubio was remembering John Lewis, he put a picture up, and in fact, he made it his Twitter profile picture of a picture of Marco Rubio with Elijah Cummings. Now, Lewis and Cummings had actually been confused for each other for a very, very long time in Congress.
They do look
They
really
look really
similar.
similar, absolutely. But
So when I heard that he had died and I saw um I saw the photo with it, I was like, oh, they put the wrong photo. And then I opened it up and then I was like, did they put the wrong photo? Like I had to check myself. And so then I went and looked it up and I was like, oh wow, okay. They didn't put the wrong photo, but it's uncanny how alike they looked.
yeah, it is. And like I said, it had been happening for a long time. So, I mean, a lot of people in the know weren't really upset by that. But of course, Twitter had to go absolutely fucking nuts over the fact that he did that.
Always. Good old Twitter.
Well, he just thinks all black people look the same. No, dude, those two
They
actually look pretty
literally look the
similar.
same. Oh my gosh.
But that is one thing for sure if you're going to be making a statement like that, especially if you're as a higher profile as Marco Rubio, who ran for president at one point in his life, you probably should make sure you've put the right person in the picture before you start paying your respects. You should probably have somebody double check that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Here's a photo. Have you seen this photo of them together?
Yes, I have. I saw that when I was looking into the story this morning. Yeah, no, you're right. It's uncanny how much they look alike with each other.
It's kind of creepy. Like
Speaking
their
of,
eyes are different. I
yeah.
will say their eyes are different. Yeah.
Speaking of things that are creepy and people that have cancer at this point, RBG has not
What
been taken.
segue? Speaking of creepy people with cancer, let's talk about one of the longest serving members of the Supreme Court. You really knocked that one out of the park, Ed.
So, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been undergoing chemotherapy to treat a recurrence of cancer from Morgan Phillips. And I don't know, I'm reading authors on this show. I do that in the morning, so it's habit. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been undergoing chemotherapy treatment since May because of a recurrence of cancer, the justice said in a statement, and also because she sold her soul to the devil so she can live for the fuck ever.
She is a tough old lady. Like, damn. Respect.
So, from what I've been gathering from the articles and everything that surround this she has liver cancer currently, but it is not specific liver cancer. It is a metastasization from I believe the pancreatic cancer that she had prior, because she's been treated for pancreatic cancer once, or I think it was lung cancer that she had the first time. And then it's been migratory now to her pancreas, which we had last year, and now back onto her liver. So this isn't necessarily the same liver cancer that took John Lewis, which took him because he got diagnosed just in December.
Yeah.
So you normally look at liver cancer and say this is instant death sentence, and we should start be looking for a replacement.
Yikes.
But this may or may not be that dire for Ginsburg, and she actually may be able to continue going on. Now, she is continuing work at this point. Nobody knows whether she is actually making the statements or if it is a staffer that's ghostwriting for her at any of this point that has been floated around the world of the internet. But for the most part, it looks like she is going to return to work. She's doing well with her chemotherapy, and we wish her a long and happy life and hope that she dies from nothing but natural causes, and issue no hate to this woman. Susan Wojcicki. What do you,
Chill Anarchist says it's obviously the Rona.
I did hear people talking about whether or not did John Lewis die. Are they going to say that he died of coronavirus at this point? Which has been a joke that's been going around ever since anybody prominent has died since this whole thing happened. But
Right.
where do you stand on Ginsburg?
I mean, I respect the work that she's done because to have the kind of career that she's had is incredible, period. I definitely don't always agree with her.
No, she does seem to be a lot of big government decisions, especially writing in the majority of making sure that things happen from the big government. Well, one of the things that I've talked about on this right off from the beginning is the fact that I really do think, first off, you thought the George Floyd protests were bad. Wait till this woman dies and Donald Trump is still the president. You are going to see this country burn in a way that you've never seen it burn before. They are going to destroy this country.
I don't know. I kind of think she'll hold on just out of spite.
Well, one of the other ideas that I thought, well, if she could hold on out of spite, was could this be an October surprise? Because think about what happens if a Supreme Court justice steps down in October, right before a presidential election, especially with the precedents that we've seen so far of waiting until the next president is decided.
She wouldn't. I don't think she would.
You don't?
No, I think that would be too big of a risk.
See, I don't know, because either way, you come into this point of it's a win-win for Democrats if she steps down. Hear me out on this. If she steps down and Trump replaces her right away because they can slam somebody right through. Mitch McConnell has the Senate and their simple majority. They can slam somebody through.
I don't know that they would, though. I mean, Kavanaugh took an inordinate amount of time.
Mm-hmm. But hear me out on this. If they do find a way to do that, they slam somebody through, then we come up and hear, well, Trump is the dictator that we always thought that he would be. He just took it. He slammed it through. He didn't respect the way of the government. And if they don't and they decide to wait, well, that's the election campaign for them right there. Well, we have to vote for the Senate because we have to make sure that evil Trump gets his judicial pick blocked, or you have to vote for the president because we have the seat open. If she steps down in October, this definitely seems like a win-win. So I don't know what the point is. I mean, once again, you are absolutely correct. She's had an incredible career off of this. She's made terrible decisions. I do think it's time for her to step down. Just retire. Spend some time with your family. You are going to be remembered in history for a very, very, very long time.
Well, she's only the second female Supreme Court justice. I mean, in chronological order. Huh?
I thought she was the first.
No, Sandra Day O'Connor was first.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about O'Connor.
Her, and then I think Kagan after that.
Yep. Kagan and Sotomayor.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Forgot her. Yeah, there's only been 4. Chill Anarchist says Ginsburg is the Palpatine of SCOTUS justices. I kind of agree.
I like that.
And I wonder who her Anakin is. Ooh. No, thank you.
Will that person at least be able to act a little bit better?
Oh, I actually really like Hayden Christensen.
From what I understand, he's actually tuned up his chops and he's actually become a pretty good actor out of it. But he was a robot in those movies.
He was a good actor before those movies.
Yeah.
I will have you know. If you haven't watched it yet, watch the movie called Life as a House with him and Kevin Kline. I always want to say Kevin Costner. It's not him. Kevin Kline and Hayden Christensen. It's a fantastic movie.
I will look into that, but as you know, I've only seen 10 movies in my entire life, and that is not one of them, so.
This is why I keep saying we need to do movie reviews on this so I can get you to actually watch more television.
I still have the text where you brought that up there, so I'm going to look into that movie this week. What was it again? The one that you wanted to do first?
Life as a House.
You had one before that, didn't you?
V for Vendetta.
Oh. I thought it was something else, but yeah, I can watch that. That's actually on Netflix right now.
And you need to watch the 13th too.
Okay. That's the one
Mercy.
I'm thinking of, the 13th.
The 13th, Just Mercy, and V for Vendetta.
Life as a House.
Life as a House, yeah. Proves that Hayden Christensen can actually act. I promise. Let's move on.
Okay, so from KSTP out of Minneapolis, Melton Moe takes a big fundraising lead over Omar in the 5th District. So Minnesota's primaries are coming up next month. They've been delayed at one point at this point. And Ilhan Omar has got a challenger. Now, of course, we watched Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pretty much walk all over her challenger, which I still don't understand how that happened, but you've got star power out there. But Ilhan Omar is not enjoying the same thing. Reading from this article, Anton Melton Moe is a mediation lawyer and political newcomer running for Congress in Minnesota's 5th District, but you wouldn't know he's a newcomer by his fundraising figures from the quarter ending June 30th. According to FEC records, Melton Moe raised $3.2 million in the quarter from April to June and still has $2 million in cash on hand. Incumbent Congresswoman Ilhan Omar raised just under $472,000 in the quarter and has $1.1 million cash on hand, plus whatever she can bilk out of her husband's firm. So,
do you think they would really try that again with the amount of trouble that they got into last time?
Well, she's got a clear shot at the money, and they can never ask her about it because they're married now.
That's true.
So
I think that's all an act.
Yeah, this is close to home for me because I actually grew up only an hour away from Minnesota's 5th District. Mm-hmm. And I cannot believe for a second that they elected her, but it actually happened.
It's probably changed a lot since you lived there.
Yeah. But I mean, it is just astounding that she is not popular in that district. And
she's got to be popular with somebody.
Well, now they know what she's going to do, though, too, keep in mind. She's had 2 years to sit back and prove herself. And just the fact that this relatively politically unknown person raised that much money out of the district to try and come out. Now, she has the advantage of the star power like AOC did, and she can come pull some donations up out of the rest of the country. And I do believe that there's going to be some things from the squad to try and get her on there. I know that AOC has promised to try and get more people primarying some of these people that were long-standing with more progressive people, so I don't think that she's going to go out and lose somebody like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the DCC will be all over it too.
But do you think that this means that we're rid of Ilhan Omar at this point?
No, I don't think so.
Do you think it's legitimate, or do you think some people did something?
I don't know. Maybe. Wait and see.
The September 11th happened and some people did some things?
Did she really say that?
Yes, she did.
Oh, Lord.
She got into a bunch of trouble for it, too. Yeah, I think part of what's killing her is just she has been blatantly anti-Semitic
Yeah,
in
for
a
sure.
society that it's not popular for.
It's popular in the Middle East to be that way, but not here.
It's popular among some groups of people as well in the country, but as for the society as a
They're
whole, it's
very
not.
small.
Yes.
They're very, very small.
What do you think happens if she loses? I mean,
She throws a fit,
yeah.
and they try to say it was rigged or election tampering or something like that. That's always the claim, or Russia hacked the election or whatever.
Well, it does warm me up a little bit that this guy's pulling ahead fundraising in that district because, I mean, looking back to New York 14 with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the primary that she just won, there is less than 0% chance that a GOP or a libertarian can come up and take that district. That is less than zero. Like Nancy Pelosi said, a glass of water with a D in it can get elected in that district, and Minnesota 5 is pretty much the same. So to have a primary challenger come up and be able to do this rather than depending on somebody to do it from the general is, I mean, it makes me sleep a little bit easier for the normalcy of this country and not us slipping into democratic socialism and Middle East pandering. But I don't. I'm happy to see this.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know if he would be any better.
It's possible. It's possible not, but
He's probably still big government, so
probably.
just a different brand of big government. He may not be Marxist, but he might be, I don't know, just right wing authoritarian.
Tell me about this recension of the deportation order for online students.
Oh, yeah, they realized that was not going to be popular. So, a couple weeks ago, we talked about this. The Ivy League colleges were told that the Trump administration was going to deport all of the international students that were here on visas for education if the universities were not hosting online classes or if they were not hosting in-person classes. So pretty quickly, there were 8 federal lawsuits filed and pushback from hundreds of universities. And so they announced this decision at the start of a hearing in a federal lawsuit in Boston brought by Harvard University and MIT. And the district judge Burroughs said federal immigration authorities agreed to pull the July 6th directive and return to the status quo.
Which, and you and I think, both agreed last week that this was a bad idea to start with. I mean, we're going to come out and we're going to train these people, and possibly even on their government's dime, but we're going to spend the money and the resources to teach these people how to compete in the world. And then they're not going to be here to apply for jobs and get a work visa and actually stay here and use what we taught them to do. I mean, if I'm going to spend that kind of time and treasure to teach somebody, I want them to get a job here. I don't know.
Right.
I know that you and I kind of differ a little bit on our stances on immigration. But I do think that the more legal immigration that we have, the better we're going to do, because we are going to pull people out of some of these countries, especially if they're willing to do it the legal way. We will be getting some of the best and the brightest out of these countries. It's my stance on illegal immigration aside. We do good when we bring people in from other countries legally.
Yeah, and we've got almost 1 million foreign students enrolled, just in Asia, just from Asia alone, which I'm going to guess is mostly India and China. We've got almost 800,000 students. That's a lot. And then it's pretty much equally split between Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America, South America. 90,000, 81,000, 80,000. So by the time you add all of those up, and then Sub-Saharan Africa, North America, which I'm assuming means Canada, then yeah, I mean, that's just bad policy.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really look onto this is, what about the resources to do so? Now,
Right. If you put all of the financial burden on these students when they've already paid all that financial burden up front. And then you basically have to make them go through all of that again while expecting them to continue doing well in their studies. And a lot of these people, they're not just undergrads. I mean, a lot of them are pursuing higher ed degrees. They're getting master's degrees, they're getting PhDs, they're working on their thesis, on their dissertation, things like that. So they're getting advanced degrees, or they're doctoral students,
Mm-hmm.
medical students, things like that. Um, Clearing them all out of their programs is not a good idea, especially when we already have a healthcare shortage here, doctors and nurses.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't think there's a healthcare shortage here with how many people on Twitter are worked in ICU units or have wives that work in the hospital. Or
Yeah.
well, and the other Tim Pool brought this up when he was talking about this as well. You're sending some of these people, like the people that go back to Europe that get deported, they're going to be fine. They've pretty much got high speed internet all across the EU. The people that go back to Canada, but if you're sending somebody back to Mumbai, they're not going to have a high speed internet access, and they're not going to be able to sit in their classes either because, okay, yeah, their class is at 1 p.m. U.S. time, Central time, let's say. What is it? 2 o'clock in the morning in Mumbai?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some of this just doesn't work.
Yeah, and that was one of the things mentioned in the article. A doctoral student from Ecuador was saying she has spotty internet at home in Ecuador. There's no way for her to continue working on her thesis there.
So, yeah, I think this was the right decision. I really do. And I'm kind of glad that it happened out the way that it did.
I do. Even if you're even if you're someone who's not pro-immigration, um, you can still see the value here. I mean, these are, of all the types of immigrants that you could admit into the country, wouldn't you want the most educated ones? Probably.
All right. I'm actually, because I glossed over this before, I completely missed this here. I do want to talk about Hillary going on the Daily Show here before we get into Thomas Massey here. And I have a video
not
on
seen
this. So it was probably about a 15-minute interview. I brought it down to about 4 minutes on this. So let me get this up here, and we can all see what's going on with Hillary and the Daily Show. Oh, I got video playing here.
I do know that you've been really active in having your voice heard. One of the biggest things you've been passionate about is voting. It seems like America's on an ominous path to a November date when there's going to be a lot of questions in and around the election. Donald Trump is vehemently against mail-in voting. What do you make of this, and what do you think the path should be to getting people the easiest access to casting their votes?
Republicans have two prongs to their strategy to try to win. The first is try to prevent as many people who they think won't vote for them from voting. So, make the lines really long where young people vote, or African Americans vote, or Hispanics vote. Try to make vote by mail as difficult as possible. Claim it's fraudulent when indeed it's not. In fact, that's how Donald Trump votes, and everybody who knows about vote by mail understands that.
Is there a part of you that is worried that Donald Trump would be able to use any of those stories to try and undermine the entire election and say, you see, there's that one and there's that one. I don't think we should trust this election at all because it says that I've lost?
Well, I think it is a fair point to raise as to whether or not, if he loses, he's going to go quietly or not. And we have to be ready for that. But there have been so many academic studies and other analyses which point out that it's just it's an inaccurate, fraudulent claim. There isn't that problem. All the games that are played and all of the photo IDs and any kind of restriction that can be imposed to try to keep the vote down in places that aren't going to vote for Republicans, that's the real danger to the integrity of our election.
Let me ask you this question. Are you now ready to wear a mask now that Donald Trump has finally put one on? I'm assuming you just haven't been wearing one waiting for this moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've actually been wearing one, and I think, better late than never, I guess. My daughter had a great tweet, which I retweeted, where she said, look, I'm not being sarcastic. If he would sell masks with his face on them, and go ahead and make the money, at least it would send a good message. So now that he has been seen once in a mask, maybe those people who still, take their cues from him will similarly start wearing masks, because we're in a desperate situation again, Trevor. I mean, look, Florida, if it were an individual country right now, would have the fourth highest rate in the world after the overall US and Brazil, India. So, we are a long way from getting this under control.
I have to ask you about Roger Stone. Help me understand. A, why do presidents, or should presidents, have the power to pardon anybody, especially someone who's related to them in a case? And secondly, what precedent could Trump be setting for America, / do you think it's going to be a precedent where a president says, I will pardon anybody who protects me by not snitching?
Well, I think you just summed up why Roger Stone was pardoned. He basically threatened.
First off, I want to put out there that Roger Stone was not pardoned right in the middle of this. Sorry, I had to interrupt that one there, but
Trump. He basically said, I sure don't want to go to jail, and I sure have a lot more to say. And boy, I just wish there'd be somebody who could stop me from having to go to jail. And guess what? Trump intervened. This is an extension of the total disregard for the rule of law. The pardon power is supposed to be used for compassionate purposes, to try to right wrongs, to try to make sure that people are not being punished unfairly or have been punished enough. And in this case, it's a continuation of the cover-up, because the one thing that Trump is fearful of when it comes to his being president is that finally we will see how illegitimate his victory actually was, and how he was involved in the seeking of foreign help and then the utilization of it, and how Roger Stone was critical to that. But unless Trump is defeated at the polls in November, we will never really know everything there is to know about this really deep, ongoing dismantling of institutions and undermining the rule of law, and the original sin of the way that he actually won the election. So Roger Stone was in the middle of it all, and that's why Trump had to cover it up.
all right. So that's what we have for that video. Where do you want to start?
I couldn't hear it. I can't hear it when you play it.
Oh. Well, I guess we'll go back through and kind of paraphrase everything. So, first off, it came out that they were talking about the masks and whether or not Hillary's been wearing her mask, and she said, yes, absolutely, she has. And then she went on to say, well, Trump should he should put out masks with his name on them and his face on them, because his people will do whatever they want to do. But for the most part, it was a video that went along and just said, well, this was Russia all over again, and Roger Stone was because of Russia.
Russia.
One of the things that came out of this that I saw was the fact they were talking about the commutation of Roger Stone's sentence, but they kept saying pardon. Both Trevor Noah and Hillary Clinton said that Roger Stone was pardoned. Roger Stone was not pardoned. His sentence was commuted. He is still a guilty felon at this point.
Yes. Commuting a sentence does not mean that you've been pardoned. That's totally different. We covered that last week.
Yeah, and then of course, she's got to weigh her 2 cents in, while her husband pardoned 1,900 people in his presidency. Trump has pardoned 19 rather, not 9. So Bill pardoned 100 times more people than Trump did in his presidency.
I wonder what he pardoned people for. I'd have to go look that up, because I was a kid when that happened.
Yeah.
Really, the only political news story I remember from the 90s was Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, well, they didn't really cover a lot. Like, when Obama did it too, they weren't covering a lot of the pardons. They were covering a lot more because there was independent media that was demanding it of them, but they covered it a lot more under Obama. But they didn't really cover it under Clinton or Bush, because Bush had a bunch of them too. He had like 430 some.
That's a lot.
And those all came like right at the end too. So
They usually do all come right at the end because they know that there's no repercussions at that point. And they don't have to listen to the backlash for the next 4 years if they do it at the end of their first term.
So I don't know. And with Hillary, I am dead afraid that they're going to name her as the vice president.
I can give you one reason why they're not going to.
Floor is yours.
Kamala Harris got a facelift.
I wanted to put that picture up too. I just ran out of time to do it. Yeah, she looked almost demonic that last interview too, like the black eyes and
new face. Who dis? She looked like the guy from Men in Black that's like wearing the skin suit. When he like pulls his head up and it like stretches everything, that's exactly what it looked like.
So that was the Hillary video. Tell me a bit about Massey and pulling the troops out of the Middle East.
Well, let me pull that up real quick. I wasn't ready.
Sorry, you were excited for this. I thought you would.
I was excited for this, but I didn't have the article pulled up yet.
Extemporaneously.
I'm not that good. I'm good, but not that good. Oh, let's find it. It might be out of order.
Yeah, it is out of order because I just threw things up.
Gosh, why do you do these things to me? Okay, so the quote that's in the Fox News article says, he's pushing Trump to remove all troops from Afghanistan and says it's not worth one more Gold Star family. And he called on Pelosi to hold the vote on an amendment. So Trump has been making a little bit of noise like he's going to pull troops out of Afghanistan. Last time he did this with, I think, Syria, there was a lot of pushback from a lot of members of Congress and from people like John Bolton who said, no, we can't do that. We can't do that because of all these reasons. And so Massey has moved to try to force Congress to take a vote on this. And he says, this is his quote, "We are trying to support his efforts in the National Defense Authorization Act by offering an amendment that would codify what he wants to do, which is get us out of Afghanistan. Not just withdraw some troops, but withdraw all of them." He thanked Trump for being the first president in 30 years to avoid starting a war. The U.S. has closed 5 military bases in Afghanistan as part of an agreement signed with the Taliban more than 4 months ago. The deal also promises to withdraw all U.S. forces from the bases in the first 135 days, a milestone met on Tuesday. And the U.S. has worked hard to carry out the first phase of its commitment under the agreement, including to reduce forces and depart 5 bases. NATO troops have come down in proportional numbers. So it looks like we might actually be kind of getting out of the Middle East, which is great. My fear with that is that we will replace troops with drones. Mm-hmm. That we will remove all of the troops, which is great, but we will replace them with expensive surveillance equipment. And at least from my perspective as a libertarian, we want to get out completely and not continue investing in surveillance and not continue to invest in, I don't know, CIA informants and things like this.
Okay. Well, and I completely agree with you on that. It is time. We have people that are going over to fight at this point in Afghanistan that were not born when the Twin Towers fell. When we went into Afghanistan for the first time. It is absolutely 100% time. Now, Thomas Massey, of course, has to move this to have Pelosi vote on it, which good luck with that because Pelosi's still making money off this thing. You can't just go up and propose a bill and have the troops all drawn out of Afghanistan because McConnell and Pelosi and the Clintons and the Bushes all have to find another country to demonize so they can sell weapons and make money off the war. So you got to give them time to get their finances in order.
Right.
I tweeted that at Massey when I found out about this too.
One of the biggest mind fucks for me in my life was I actually used to teach riding lessons to kids when
Okay.
I was in my early 20s. I was a professional equestrian. So I had kids in my lessons that were like teenagers that didn't remember 9/11 because they were too young.
Mm-hmm.
And as an early 20 something, I was like, wow, how, like it just, one day it just kind of clicked with me that it was like, wow, they literally don't remember a childhood without this in it,
Mm-hmm.
without this big looming thing, without these foreign interventions. They don't remember that. And I mean, I barely do because it happened when I was like 13 or 14. Um, but yeah, that really freaked me out when I first like figured that out. And then, lately I've um, gotten to know other people that are around my age, maybe a little bit older, and they have kids that are joining the military.
Mm-hmm.
I have members of my family that are younger than me that have joined the military in the last 3 to 4 years. And I'm like, wow, you were a baby when this happened.
Yeah.
And now you're going to be sent over there. And it's wild.
And I can remember a time before we had a lot of this surveillance and everything out of this because, I mean, I'm a little bit older than you. That was homecoming week of my senior year of high school.
Oh,
And it was pajama day as well. So, I mean, we were all glued to the TVs scattered around the school, sitting in our pajamas because we were all ready to celebrate the homecoming game that was going to be coming up later on that day. We had no idea that everything was going to happen like this, and then everything that's come out of it. Like you said, the surveillance state, the TSA, not being able to bring
yeah.
water on an airplane.
Millions of Americans don't remember a time
Mm-hmm.
when you could do that.
So, yes,
So.
it is crazy, and it is time. It is 100% time.
It would be one of the few things that I would congratulate President Trump on accomplishing.
They are getting fewer and farther between, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
All right. The last thing I want to talk about is this Mary Trump book that came out this past week. So,
This is our last thing.
well, we've got one more chat break and then a couple things, but I want to get to this before we hit the chat break.
Okay.
President Trump's dysfunctional upbringing created a dangerous situation for America, Nice claims. So I read this article on Contemporary, this specific one. From what I understand out of this, I'm not going to go through and read the whole thing again. Mary Trump wrote a book, and we were all hearing that it was going to be coming out last week. We talked a little bit about this last. Now it is out, and she's doing a bunch of interviews out of this. Now Trump came out and tweeted, well, she signed her NDA, and she's breaking the law because she signed the NDA. She can't be talking about this. The book goes through it. It talks about how bad John Trump was, his father, how bad he was to their family, and her father, John Trump Jr., how bad that he was to the fact that they've all been kicked out of this. The dirty dealings, the psychological problems, and the fact that John Trump wouldn't allow any of his children to fail. That's why she was estranged from the family. Now, I've been troubled with the timing of all of this because of when this is happening, when this is coming out right now. And when I read this on the morning show, I let the audience in on a little secret. And I'm going to let you on a little secret too. If anything in
Okay.
this book was true, or had any merit to it, or she was looking for a payday for any of this at all, this would have come out in 1997 when The Apprentice premiered. Not 4 months before an election that Biden's got in the bag. Are you seeing my timeline here?
Yeah, I get it. I don't know. I think The Apprentice though was pretty harmless. I mean, it was just a reality TV show, and I think a lot of people didn't expect it to really go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it did go somewhere and it lasted for more than just like 2 seasons, it was still just reality TV. Anybody could be a reality TV star, basically. Like over time, our entertainment shifted to that model completely. Whereas I remember when sitcoms were a thing, and then all of a sudden it was like reality TV everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. it was Real World and Road Rules on MTV, and then there was Big Brother, and then Survivor, and all these other kind of shows, and then The Apprentice was just kind of a natural progression of that. Being president is completely different than being the star of a reality show.
Right, but he still had the money, and he was on everybody's mind at the time. This really goes into what I've been saying since the beginning of this presidency, and that is the fact that everybody loved this guy until July 16th, 2015, when he came down the escalator in that famous moment. I mean, I just watched Top Gear. I showed my girlfriend because she hadn't seen it before. She's not really into cars, so she's never really seen Top Gear before. But we
I
sat
love
down.
Top Gear. I love old Top Gear.
Yeah, the British version. We were watching the American because I remembered it happening in the American version. They actually, the three guys in the American version, were doing various tests on various supercars that they were to deliver to an unnamed unnamed buyer that was in the market for a new high-end car, and it turned out to be Donald Trump. And this was probably from 2013, I think, was when this aired. Everybody loved the guy up until he ran for president.
No, everybody did not love the guy.
He was in every movie that happened in New York.
People did not love him, though.
Yeah.
There's no way.
A lot of people loved him at the time. He didn't get the visceral reaction that he did now.
Hard disagree. Hard disagree. Right after he was elected, that was when all the stories weaseling his way out of work, paying the bill and paying the deposit, but then never paying the balance. Mm-hmm. And then threatening to sue if the other person tried to collect, and all of these other things. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, he really is a scumbag. Like, this isn't just a thing. And then the more that time went on, and I looked into him, and I looked into, his remarks from the 90s about the Central Park Five and things like that. He's always been a dick. He's always been a complete and utter piece of trash human being.
I can see
and I was
that.
not the only one. And I was not the only one who figured it out late. I think a lot of people figured it out late.
Well,
but I think a lot of people knew too.
Yeah. Like, a lot of people on his camp were like, okay, well, we know what's coming in for this. We know what the ride is. We know what we're signing up for, and it's still better than Hillary. Mm-hmm. I think was what was on a lot of people's minds when all this started. But I don't know. He didn't get the visceral reaction like he gets now. Absolutely. And once again, especially back in the 90s when he was starting to get all of this money, I think this would have come out even back in the 80s when he was getting all this money. People would have found ways to tear him down and get their payday out of it. Instead of, like I said, doing this now, right before an election that they think that Biden's got in the bag.
I don't know. I definitely think there's lots of skeletons in those closets.
Oh, yes. I have to agree with you that one.
Packed full of the skeletons. They have all of them.
But I think some of the skeletons have to do with government officials, and I think that's why they're so pissed off at him, too. Because he knows a lot of their secrets as well, because he worked with them for so long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, let's check in with the live chat here, and then we got just a couple more to get through before the show is over.
It looks like everybody's in agreement. Troops need to come home. We all agree that. Sparta says, I think it will allow China and Russia to take the vacuum, to fill the vacuum. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Well, that would be a fun one to see, too, because State Worship China and State Worship Russia are both going to go into very, very religious Middle East.
I kind of side with Chill Anarchist. He says Russia can't afford it. I don't think they can either.
I don't think so.
They can barely afford their own military at this point.
Yeah, you are definitely right on that. They can't really afford that, but they are still going to... Because they wanted that area for the resources out of it, just the same way the U.S. does.
They've wanted it for decades, way longer than we have. They were in it in the 70s, the 80s?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we're having so many problems over there right now is because Russia was in there first. And, hey, you want to take some shots at some people who worship the state? Here, have some guns.
Right. Here's AK-47s.
You go shoot at these people.
Yeah, but we are all in agreement, I think, that the troops need to come home. Mm-hmm. And Sparta says, Putin said the world needs a world police, speaking about the USA while being critical of how it's done at the same time. Putin's a dick, too.
Yeah. Yeah, that he is.
I'm not shy about this. Like, not at all. And
I
then
am
a little bit
dictator
of
for
talk
life.
about... And then a little bit of talk about how would Europe pay for their own defense once we leave. That would
Oh,
be
Europe would
interesting.
be screwed.
Yeah, Europe would be screwed.
We'll probably talk a bit more about this next week, but I already heard this morning too that Putin's getting ready to install himself or try to install himself as a life dictator. He's trying to amend the
Finally, it's
Constitution.
taking that long.
He's trying to amend the Constitution so there's no more elections, so he just stays the czar, I guess, essentially for life.
That's insane. But we've seen it coming though. Okay. So in Russia, for those of you who don't know, I think everybody in the chat probably knows this, but maybe people who are watching don't know this. In Russia, they don't have term limits, and they definitely don't have, or they have term limits, but they're successive term limits.
Mm-hmm.
So their term limits say things like you can't serve any more than 2 terms consecutively, but that doesn't disqualify you from serving other terms non-consecutively. So basically what this has meant is that Putin, every couple of election cycles, he'll just run again for prime minister, and he wins it every time. So then after his, successive time is up, where he's served 2 or 3 terms or whatever it is, he's like, I'll go be Minister of Defense or Premier or whatever. They give him some other title. He serves in some other branch, still in like the cabinet position, and they elect someone else to be prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the prime minister of Russia right now?
I couldn't tell you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because who's the only person that you know that is as Russia's prime minister? Putin. He's the guy pulling all the strings.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't really matter if he is prime minister, minister of defense, minister of labor, whatever they put him in. He's always in control. And he always circles back and comes back to that prime minister role because he can. So this is not surprising to me at all.
Ron says, that way Putin doesn't have to rig elections anymore. Well, you know what I have to
I don't
say
think
to
he has
that?
to try very hard.
In Soviet Russia, elections rig you.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
There were some comments about people growing up with money sometimes develop a superiority complex.
Oh, fuck yes, absolutely.
Worse for kids who are born into money and not taught to be humble and honest. Mm-hmm. So I've actually seen this in real life. All right. Story time. I used to work at a tax firm. We had lots of wealthy clients, and they owned multi-generational businesses. And I saw this illustrated many times. The grandparents built the business up from nothing. So the parents that were then at that point my clients, and they had children that were my age in their mid-20s. So the parents remember the time when the grandparents worked all the time. They might have struggled in the beginning, but then eventually they had success. They remember going to the office with their parents on the weekends. They remember growing up helping out with the business, mm-hmm. being taught things like accounting, being taught things like how to run a register or whatever the case may have been based on that business model. But the grandkids, the ones that were my age, didn't grow up knowing the struggle of building the business. They only knew the business ever as successful. So they had never experienced what it was like to actually build it from nothing. They only knew success. They only knew mom and dad both drove, Escalades and Suburbans, and they had big houses in the suburbs and stuff like that. They didn't remember what it was like to stay at the office late, trying to get things done, to pay for all of the building improvements on the building that they ran the business out of. They don't remember any of that. So they grow up thinking that the business is this way and has always been this way and will always be this way. And it's really interesting when the parents start to hand over a little bit of control to the grandkids, because then they realize just how ill prepared these mm-hmm. kids are to take on the business. And it's very interesting seeing all of those dynamics play out over multi-generations. And that's definitely happened in the Trump family for sure.
100%. And I've seen a little bit close hand as well. I went out with a girl in high school, and like there wasn't a family business involved in that. It's just the parents both had really, really good jobs. Like the dad had, I'm not going to divulge what it was, but the dad had a like really good job. But they started from nothing. Like I saw the house that she grew up in versus the house that she was living in when her and I were dating, and I mean they were in this like mansion level house outside of the city, but they grew up in just a mediocre 3-bedroom house in the middle of town. And yeah, they, you know, the parents bought clothes and food for the kids. They had to go out and buy. I put cylinder heads on the girl's first car that she bought for $200.
Wait, what?
I put the engine back together in the girl's first car
Oh,
that she
okay.
bought for $200.
Okay. It's funny.
I probably should have put that down into girl terms.
Oh, ouch. You're sexist. Let's move on.
All right. We'll be seeing somebody new on the other side of the screen next week because I think somebody just quit. I'm just joking.
No, I didn't quit. But I'm going to call you on your bullshit.
All right. So speaking of people calling people on their bullshit, Fox 35 investigated in Florida this past week because Florida's Department of Health says that some labs have not reported any of the negative COVID-19 results. Fox 35 comes in and says, after Fox 35 noticed errors in the state's report on positivity rates, the Florida Department of Health said that some laboratories have not been reporting any of the negative test result data to the state. Countless labs have reported a 100% positivity rate, which means every single person tested was positive. Other labs had a very high positivity rate. Fox 35 News found that testing sites like the one local Centricare reported that 83 people were tested, and all 88 tested positive. The NCF Diagnostic in Alachua reported 88% of tests were positive. Excuse me, I have hiccups now. The report showed Orlando Health had a 98% positivity rate. However, they confirmed errors in the report. Orlando's health positivity rate is only 9.4%, not 98% as of the report. So, yeah, they're cooking books down there in Florida. Absolutely are.
It's for money. For every COVID patient, they get a federal check. They get more money. So this is always about money.
Yeah. And I mean, there's more than just the not reporting the negatives out there. And I mean, there's more going on in this as well. There are other stories coming on around the country where people are sitting in line for hours to get tested. They just sit and they sit and they sit and wait, and then finally they look and say, okay, life's too short. And then a couple weeks later or a couple days later, they get the results back in the mail that shows that they were positive, even though they never got tested.
Interesting.
There is a narrative that's going on around this coronavirus thing. People want it to turn out a certain way.
Yes, they do.
What's your take on
Very
this one so far?
On the Florida one? I mean, the government is offering an incentive for them to cook the books. So why is it a surprise when it's actually happening? I'm not surprised. You're incentivizing the behavior. So if you don't incentivize the behavior, you won't have the behavior.
And there are other things that are going along with this too, especially the thing with Florida that I've noticed as well, especially given the fact that they have these books cooked right now, because they can come out and say 100% of people in this area tested positive for the virus. That means think about all the people that didn't get tested. There's millions more cases out of this. Right after it was announced that the RNC would happen in Jacksonville instead of North Carolina. I do think that there is an agenda to come out and try and show Florida as being worse hit by this thing than it maybe actually is. I mean,
Well, we just had the Libertarian National Convention part 2 in Orlando.
What was it, a physical convention this time, or?
Yeah, it was a physical convention. They allowed for remote participation though. So I think that there were like 200 or 300 delegates actually in attendance, and then there were 600 or 700 remote.
Okay.
And there were some people that went the first day to vote on the measure to make sure that remote participation counted. And then for the rest of the time, they basically went back to their hotel rooms and they did convention from their hotel rooms alone. So they were socially distancing.
Orlando's a nice place. Did you get to go?
No, I was not interested. No, it ended up working out because I just started with Jorgensen campaign and everything was super busy. And so no, I don't need to go to convention. I'm good. It's expensive. It's very expensive to go to convention.
I would have gone just to stay in Mario's B&B again. That place was awesome.
Mario's
The, Air-
B&B.
the Airbnb. The guy that ran the Airbnb that we stayed in, and we didn't actually get to meet the guy himself because he was out working on the Libertarian campaign, works for the Libertarian Party. He was actually on Mosh's exploratory committee, from what I
Oh,
understand.
cool. Awesome.
I cannot confirm that because I never met the guy, but from what I understand, he was on the exploratory committee for that.
Very cool.
I asked you about that actually right when we left, didn't I?
I think you did.
Yes, I called
yeah.
you.
You did. I remember that. Okay. Let's move on.
Yep. Georgia, speaking of places in that region of the country and the coronavirus, Georgia governor is suing to end the city's defiance of mask rules. And I say, no, bad. Bad Kemp. So Brian Kemp has gone through and decided he's going to sue Atlanta. At the time this article was written, he was actually planning on suing several other jurisdictions, but he has backed off on that. And it's just Atlanta now at this point for the fact that they're putting a mask mandate in place. Keisha Lance Bottoms has come out since this article was written and pointed out the fact that Savannah, among other districts, have all put on mask mandates and they are not subject to the ire of Brian Kemp. But he is suing Atlanta, which, no, that is bad. You should not do that. Federalism is a thing, and you should let the lower form of government decide what is best for them, and you should not be involved. What is your take on this story?
I mean, I'm with you. Bad Kemp. Let them do what they want. It's a localized solution to a local problem.
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta is probably experiencing COVID differently than many other parts of the state that are more rural,
Mm-hmm.
that don't have mask mandates, because I think for the most part, none of the state does. But in urban areas, that's the most likely predictor of how many people are going to test positive for COVID is, do you live in an urban area or not? So it makes sense. I mean,
And yeah, like I said, I actually did. I rolled up my notebook when I read this in the morning. I said, no,
I
bad
have
Kemp.
an extra copy of
Bad.
the Wall Street Journal. Do you want to borrow it?
I think it might be a little bit too far for me to do that now, but
Oh, yeah, that's true.
no. And just as a Federalist, this rips me apart because no, the government should not be deciding what cities do with what they do. The cities should decide what's best for the cities, and the people that don't agree should get up, sell their houses or break their leases and go move somewhere else that more fits their needs, because that's what federalism means, and that's why we have it in place, or why we should have it in place. That's why I'm such a strong advocate for it, because what works for me here in Wisconsin doesn't work in South Carolina or Boston or California. And that's how it's always been. So no, I was pretty pissed about this. And now Keisha Lance Bottoms has the ability to say, well, Kemp is a racist and a sexist because the only person he's suing is the black woman that runs the city.
Wow. All right, then.
All right. So tell me a bit about this federal execution that happened this past week, because I heard a little bit about it on the radio and I read a little bit about it, but I don't know a lot of the details of what went on with this and why this was such a big deal.
So, the man that was executed, his name is Daniel Lewis Lee.
Mhm.
He was found guilty. He was found guilty. He maintains that he was innocent. His last words were, "I didn't do it. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I'm not a murderer. You're killing an innocent man." And he was executed in Terre Haute, Indiana, which some of you may remember. That was the execution place of Timothy McVeigh. I'm from Indiana, so we're very familiar with all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the Supreme Court cleared the way for the resumption of the federal death penalty in an unsigned order released 2 a.m. on Tuesday. And then he was executed later that same morning. So it wiped away a lower court order that temporarily blocked the execution of Lee in a 5-4 vote. Lee was a one-time white supremacist who supposedly killed a family of 3 and was scheduled to be executed on Monday. The lower court blocked the planned execution and 3 others, citing ongoing challenges to the federal government's lethal injection protocol. Lee's attorney said in a statement, "It's shameful the government saw fit to carry out this execution during a pandemic." So it's kind of, it's almost like they're not opposing the death penalty, they're just opposing the timing of the death penalty. So it's, the family even filed an appeal to delay it because they wanted to be there, which I think is very morbid. That's them. But it says, Earlene Peterson, whose daughter, granddaughter, and son-in-law were tortured, killed, and dumped in a lake by Lee and an accomplice, has opposed Lee's execution, telling CNN last year she did not want it done in her name. The family's attorney told CNN Tuesday morning that the family is heartbroken and said the government prevented them from being there, and family did everything they could to be there. So again, not opposing the death penalty itself, just opposing the timing of it. It's kind of unclear. I oppose the death penalty completely, just because I think that the federal government is incapable of doing it properly without having a margin of error.
It's an interesting take, but I understand where you're coming from with it.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit that there are definitely people who deserve the death penalty, because to me, that's a human reaction to knowing that people commit heinous crimes. And I understand that, but I also understand the fact that it's not an accurate, it's not a good deterrent. It's not fiscally responsible because it's so expensive. It doesn't actually deliver any justice. And most of the time, it's more punitive to keep someone in jail for life than it is to kill them. Killing is actually mercy at that point.
Right.
But also the rate at which we get it wrong is documented at 4%. There have been studies done that have shown that the true number of innocent people executed that shouldn't have been is unknowable, because there's so many legal technicalities with cases that haven't been proven one way or the other that you can't count them. So legal technicalities prevent outside organizations like the Innocence Project and things like that from giving accurate numbers. 4% is like the bottom baseline of what we know. It's probably higher than that. And to me, that's unacceptable. I can't condone that.
Well, and that's completely understandable. I know I watched the Monopoly on Violence video, and it's hard for me because I do come at it from a kind of a religious sense out of this, and you know, he who bears the sword for a reason. I understand all that entirely, and for some of these cases, if you definitely know that the person did it, like I liked what Ron White said about Texas when they were putting the death penalty, the amendment to the death penalty in Texas. If you kill somebody and more than 3 people saw you do it, they move you to the front of the line so you're not sitting there waiting. But at that point, if more than 3 people saw you do it, yes, you're going to get your appeals and everything, but it pretty much confirms that you did it. So in that case, it would be easier for me to accept. But yes, you can't, if an appeal comes out and new evidence comes up and somebody they find out that they didn't do it, they can let the guy out of prison. They can't let him out of the grave.
Yeah, no, you can't.
So I'm a little bit torn on the idea of that, and I do think that there's some people that need to be, as our mutual friend Britt said, taken straight to the wood chipper.
Right.
But also there was the the story that was put out by the redheaded libertarian, the official one, last week, questioning whether or not the father was right in his ability to, or the fact that he killed that one guy because he found his farmhand molesting his 5-year-old daughter, whether he was right to do so or not. And I said, well, in principle, he wasn't really right to take
When
the
you
life.
when you catch someone in the act of doing something, that's completely different than trying someone after the fact.
Yeah.
So in a situation like that, that's self-defense.
Yep.
Even if you were not the person being aggressed upon, you are protecting a member of your family. So it's
Yes.
still considered self-defense. That is a completely different issue than a death penalty case where someone is being tried for a crime after the fact. So most of the time, like you were saying with the Ron White, was it? Where he said if more than 3 people see you do it. Well, my first question is, if 3 people saw you do it, why the hell didn't they stop you? And
Right.
secondly, death penalty cases are never that clear cut. They're death penalty cases for a reason, typically because the crime was extremely heinous, it was premeditated, it was meticulously planned to where you wouldn't be caught. So the chances of you catching someone on camera or an eyewitness or something like that in a death penalty case are very low. And the other thing to remember is that studies and scientific evidence have shown that eyewitness testimony is some of the most unreliable. So even if you do have an eyewitness to a crime, they're probably not accurate.
Oh, and I honestly, because it wasn't taking a life, I said on principle, the guy probably shouldn't have taken the other guy's life. But in practice, if it was my daughter, they would have never found the body.
Yeah, no. Feed them to the pigs.
Yep. All right.
But again, that's self-defense. Totally different. All right, so we covered that one.
Tell me about this Twitter hack.
Oh boy. Twitter. So apparently, hackers paid a Twitter employee who helped them carry out an unprecedented attack on several high-profile accounts. The Twitter insider allegedly worked with hackers to take over the accounts of Elon Musk, Barack Obama, Bill Gates, and others, including Joe Biden. One of the anonymous hackers involved in the attack told the outlet they paid their employee for help, though the terms of the deal were unclear. The hackers said, "We used a rep that had literally done all of the work for us." The accounts were taken over with an internal Twitter tool that allows various details about the identity and status of user accounts, such as whether the email address has been confirmed and whether the account has been suspended, according to screenshots Motherboard published. Twitter told Motherboard it's still investigating whether its employee allowed hackers to access the tool or used it to take over the accounts themselves. The company referred the post's questions to its Wednesday statement on the attack, which acknowledged that hackers successfully targeted some of our employees with access to internal systems and tools and used that access to take control of high-profile accounts owned by Apple, Uber, Kanye West, and others. So it did limit access to verified accounts right after, and then it reinstated. It also says they're looking into what other malicious activity may have conducted or information they may have accessed. The hack sent Twitter shares tumbling 5.1%, and they were down to less than $34 the next day.
Yeah, this was intense, but it also made Twitter much better for a little while because all the blue checks were shut off for a little bit, and we didn't have to hear from Amy Klobuchar, among other people.
Yeah, our Twitter account for the campaign was disabled too, and we were just kind of like, well, no, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, it wasn't hacked or anything, but they disabled all of the verified accounts on Twitter for a few hours until they checked everything out, and then they gave us access back.
Well, the interesting thing out of this was, like you were reading in the article, there was a lot of other stuff that we found out about verified accounts and shadow banning that we suspected, but we didn't know until a lot of this record had to get turned over to Motherboard. So, I mean, we got a lot out of this, not just as the common folk. We got a lot out of this more than just not having to interact with Blue Check for a little while. What did you see on any of the rest of that?
Not much. I mean, it was just kind of like, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to do anything? people noticed Joe Biden's account got hacked immediately because he posted the Bitcoin thing.
And a
And then
complete sentence coherently.
and then it got deleted shortly thereafter. So people wondered if it was a mistake or if it was a hack or what happened exactly. And I think initially people thought a staffer on his team had gotten hacked, and that's how they accessed his Twitter account. But it turns out that it was straight from Twitter. So that made it a completely different thing from that point forward.
I mean, our social media is not secure by any stretch of the imagination. And
No.
the people that are doing stuff and sharing business and everything over their DMs really need to sit back and rethink what they're doing with their lives. I mean, you and I have gone back and forth with the DMs, but it's nothing really personal that goes in between there anywhere. But people that are sharing sensitive personal information through Twitter DMs might want to sit back and rethink that. I mean, what's the most somebody's going to get out of our DMs right now? The link to the Zoom call?
Yeah, they could take over our Zoom, but that's about it.
And people have been doing that since Zoom was incepted and we started doing online school.
Right.
All right, I've got one more thing for you, and that is the video that came out of Burger King this past week. I don't know if you saw that or not.
I didn't, but
It's-
I can't see videos when you share them from your side.
Oh, can you pop open like a monitor or something?
I only have one.
It's the commercial that the commercial from this past week about the lemongrass. Well, let's get that set up here. So, because if you can
Okay.
at least see the video, there's subtitles on it.
I'll mute myself and I'll watch it real quick while you do it.
All right. Let me get. Where is my video? There it is. I don't want that one. I want this one.
When cows fart and burp and splatter, well, it ain't no laughing matter. They're releasing methane every time they do. And that methane from the rear goes up to the atmosphere and pollutes our planet, warming me and you. Yes, that methane that they pass is a greenhouse gas that'll trap the sun's heat and change our climate too. Gee, is it hot in here or is it just me? So to change their emissions, Burger King went on a mission, testing diets that would help reduce their farts. That's a start. And now there ain't no question that it's helping cows' digestion, adding lemongrass so they can play their part. Woo-hoo. Reducing methane, and the scientists have proven that it works. Reducing methane, we can reduce emissions by more than a third.
If my cow ain't farting, must be me.
Reducing methane, and the formula is free and open source. So join in. Reducing methane, got the cow kids singing for a better world. Got the cow kids singing for a better world.
So that was the video that made a lot of people rethink their decision to purchase Burger King. You're still muted, by the way.
I am still muted. That was incredibly annoying.
I've heard people say child abuse to this.
It's elder abuse because I'm older.
So now to catch up with what the lyrics were saying, Burger King this week added a lemongrass mixture into their cows' diets because it will reduce cow farts, going back to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal and the allegation that cow farts are causing global warming in a massive scale. Now, the formula is free and open source, so pretty much any farmer can come along into this, but from what I can understand out of this, first off, this is going to be long-term untested. So we don't know how this is going to affect things in the future. There's not been time to get a clinical trial in as to what this is going to do to the beef, what it's going to do to the cows, how it's going to do so, because we just started talking about this last year.
Interesting.
What is?
I mean, I'm for it. They made a voluntary change. Why not? I mean, if it works better and it does reduce greenhouse gas emissions, then sure, why not? If you want to do it, do it.
Right.
Don't make it mandatory.
Right.
But I think it's great that they're exploring, kind of unconventional innovation.
Well, and the thing that gets me, because I stopped eating Burger King a while ago when they did the Chick Fries commercial. I don't know if you remember that one or not.
No, but chicken fries are delicious.
Chicken fries are delicious, but when they were trying to protest the pink tax, they made a commercial where a guy came in and got chicken fries for $3.99, and the girl got chicken fries in a pink box, and they were $7.99. And I said, you know what? Nope, I'm not eating Burger King anymore.
That's funny.
If they want to do whatever they want to do for their own feel-good kind of thing, donate to a women's cause or whatnot, I'm okay with that. Just don't preach your morality to me. That's what I can't stand. And I was just about getting ready. You know what? I wouldn't mind having a Burger King burger again. Maybe I'll give them another chance. Enough time has passed from the Chick Fries thing. And nope,
but
they went
cow
out.
farts,
and
the
they
cow
did-
farts did it for you.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't need a lecture in my morality from the people I get my burger from.
Right.
So that was, yeah, I'm not going to Burger King for a long time after this. And they're pushing the fear porn on the kids. For the most part, that's all that I can see out of all of this is just they are pushing the fear onto the kids. Well, do this or you won't have a world
Yeah,
anymore. And
Where would kids have seen this commercial though? I mean, my kid watches Netflix. There's no commercials on it.
yeah,
Like, I don't know where they would see it.
that's true. Network television is going away in a hurry. I wouldn't have seen this if it wouldn't have been for Twitter.
Right, exactly. I never would have seen it either because I don't. Here in South Carolina, we don't even have a TV in the apartment, and at home, I only watch Netflix. Really, occasionally I'll watch like a classic movie on one of the cable channels, but no, not usually. I don't watch news or anything like that.
I can't even do a classic movie on the cable channels because I cut the cord. I have Netflix and YouTube, and I don't care to pay for Hulu or anything. I do watch Twitch sometimes too, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are just going to stream service that don't have commercials and they're willing to pay for entertainment to not have commercials in it. So I think it'll go around online and that's where people will see it. They don't realize that if they just ignore it, then if they ignore it, they don't talk about it and they don't share it, then nobody's going to see it and it loses its effectiveness.
I think Joe over on Twitch has the comment of the night right now, just on this video. By Jove, what sorcerous propaganda is this? All right.
Indeed.
If you want to catch us up with the rest of the live chat, I'm going to hit the D-Live box because I didn't do that last week, so it's plenty full. So if you guys over on D-Live want your lemons, do that while my lovely co-host here is reading the live chat, and we will get through that and get through the outro.
Sparta had his Bitcoin stolen by Obama. He told me I could double my money. Please, Prince Obama, give me back my 400 Bitcoins.
You had 400 Bitcoins? I want to go be friends with you.
Right? Exactly.
That's a lot of US dollars.
I know, right? We have a viewer tuning in from Greece. Say hello to Oblivion.
Hi, Oblivion. I see that you typed something in there and I can't read that.
Because I translated into Greek because I'm nice.
Nice.
I just said hi. It seems like a lot of characters for hi, but just trust me. The Bible requires 2 eyewitnesses who are reliable. Yes, they do. Ron said goodbye. I said goodnight to him. We were in the middle of something, so I didn't interrupt. Sparta says, technology is growing like a fungus and humans have no vision of what the mushroom will form. This is very true. That was deep.
That was.
Chilean says, Ed, what are you subjecting us to? And Sparta says, stop cows producing meth, Joe Biden.
You know, the thing that, you know, they put in the air and blows up laboratories in Florida.
That poor man. He needs to just be retired.
It's time, just like RBG. It's about time. All right, I think I'm going to call that a show. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a plan.
All right, so I want to thank everybody who came in and chatted with us tonight here. Thanks everybody for making the show go, and as always, thank you to my co-host for coming in and helping me out once again with all of this here. If you guys want to finish the conversation with me, you can find me over on Twitter at Ed's blog Twitter with a one in place of the I, or you can find my co-host over on the same platform at Libertarian Red 1. You can go and check both of us out over there. You can go find us on our Discord server, which is linked in the description below. You can go have conversations, throw articles at the Articles Worth Investigating, where we can both go out and check them out and add them either to our show's itineraries or just discuss them over on Twitter as well. So feel free to come in and help us out with the show. And if you want to go back, if you're just catching up now and you want to check us out later on demand, you can check us out over on YouTube and over on BitChute.com, or check us out on the audio platform, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Remember, if you're on iTunes, leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts, helps us overcome the algorithms. And it's the same over on YouTube and BitChute. Leave that like, subscribe to the channel if you're not doing already. If you're over on DLive, throw us some lemons. That helps us move up and helps us go forward. And lastly, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. What do you want to send them up for the evening with?
Everybody have a good week. Be good, make good choices, and we'll see you here next week.
Bye.